What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, the Bees Bad Back here, and we are back with episode 144 of the video game therapy series. Yeah, it's a stupid bit, but everyone asked about the bees' knees, but what about the bees' back or their ankles or any other things? I have to imagine if it's the bees' knees are good, they probably have a bad back. Because if you ask any old person, they're always like, "Well, you're either going to have a bad back or some bad knees." I don't know. I guess if it's any indication of my life so far, I probably have a bad back. I had a bad back when I was younger, mostly from running, but that has mostly gone away. I have a bad neck now, actually. That's probably my worst thing. And before you say it's not because I'm craning over a screen most of the time, it's just I do too many shrugs, probably. Uh, I want that like neck that people can like drink peanut butter. You ever seen those guys have like the necks that looks like wings on a dragon? It's like their neck is like a pickle jar. I mean, it's ridiculously thick. You could like grab, it'd be like a saddle. You could grab both sides of it. Um, anyway, yeah. I guess the first thing I want to talk about is the, uh, what I just kind of call the formalization of informal systems. So for many of, I guess, at first it might be helpful to, I guess, define like formality and informality. Um, I won't say like formality has to include math. I'm sure there's some people that say like, well, if you're gonna have any kind of formal definition, a formal definition kind of implies, hey, this is mathematical in nature. Whereas I'm just saying formal is some kind of like a system designed to kind of control the volatility of something. So, for example, I might say that like just eating whatever food you find outside is kind of an informal way of eating, whereas maybe a more formalized way of food would be like to have food first inspected and rated by the Food and Drug Administration or whatever, or just like some kind of like it's some system that is meant to reduce the amount of uncertainty in whatever it is. In this case, I'm talking about food, but it really could be talking about anything. And I'm not talking about food in this case. I'm just using that as an example. My example is about food, but more importantly, my example is in all kinds of things because I feel like now more than ever, institutions and things are seeing everything is becoming very formalized. Things that used to be kind of uh, handshake and hand wavy agreements now all kind of have to have badges and yearly fees and other stuff, and just everything seems to have some kind of organization that controls things now. And part of what that does is like, on the good side of things, it allows standardization of something. If I say like, I guess I'll keep with the food example for now. It's like, well, everyone needs this allotment of vitamin B or something like that. It's like, all right, we can now kind of like discuss and as a committee we can see well, is this an accurate number? People can kind of debate on that. But the other problem with kind of one of the big problems is with this like almost centralized formality thing, because in general when you formalize something it often it results in some kind of singular entity, some central entity that again is responsible for managing things, whatever it is. But even like like the DMV to like manage and we are we monitor this, like this is our domain. They kind of specialize in that, but what that does is kind of it creates this kind of you can even say like a micro dictatorship where it's like whatever they say is like the law. And while on some things that might be benign, it's like I don't, who cares what the vitamin B recommendations are, from the FDA, like that doesn't seem like that's not like a damning example of why centralization and formalization is bad. But on many other things, even especially even with regard to food, like having central authorities, I think is causing a lot more contention, meaning that like people that disagree now find themselves further and further apart. And partially it is due to like just the I'll say like the forced ignorance that is thrust onto people. Like they're kind of it's a good thing not to know because we have so many tools and things that can help us with things. And the people that are don't take whatever the authorities things at face value end up finding themselves in places that are very very far away from central authority. I'll take one thing. This is just because I've been on this bender as of recently, but like with diet. And so again, the food kind of example was a lead into this. Uh, but with people's diets and like what the FDA recommends or even whatever the American Dietary Association. Pick your stupid institution. Like the majority of them, besides I guess ones I haven't heard of, all of them have like the worst diets possible, like what they're actually advocating for eating and like the consumption of things. And the worst diet, of course, is to my subjective opinion. Um, and of course the opinion of many doctors. But part of the other issue with this is like, let's just like take one opinion for example. Like, the FDA or whatever is like, oh yeah, soy protein is a good and environmentally friendly replacement for like regular protein or something. A Like on one hand, it isn't. Like if you look into the actual soy plant, the soy is horrible for the environment. Soy is like there's something ridiculous like per acreage of soy you could feed like 4,000 cows or something absurd. Like soy is the thirstiest crop on the planet. And then secondary with like soy protein, it quite literally is the worst protein like you could possibly eat. Like there's however many essential amino acids are. Again, I'm not a dietitian. Like soy has like two, and animal proteins have all of them. So but it's like the I guess the right opinion to like love soy and eat soy stuff. But like soy objectively is a fucking horrible food. Nobody should eat it. Soy burgers shouldn't matter. But what happens is like the central authority, whoever it is, like makes some decision. Again, even if it is a contentious decision, it's still like a decision that has consequences. And let's say the FDA says that soy is good. People should eat more soy. And so people are like, well, the FDA, like, who are you? You're just like one dude. Like, I'm not gonna like the FDA like has a bunch of people. So like the fact that they all think soy is good, so I'd probably believe them over you. And then so it's like, all right, fine. Even if I like chose to die on this hill and like become like some field expert in something. And this doesn't just apply just to I'm not talking just about soy here. I'm talking about like this could apply to everything. So kind of take this and apply this in whatever way you see reasonable. And that of course is famous last words. Uh, but if I decide to dedicate 40 years of my life to become this soy expert, and in my case, my opinion, what I would expect to happen, unless my mind was changed by soy and I became this soy fanatic, I would imagine that I would result in a lot of the same opinions I have, where like soy's terrible, nobody should eat it. It's not a valid replacement for animal proteins. It's not like it shouldn't be. It's not good. It's a bad food. Don't eat it. But in order to like kind of convince anybody that is this very kind of scientifically minded and is accepting of authority figures, at face value, they're not very skeptical people. I would have to be like the number one expert on soy, and even then, it's like, well, you're just like one dude. Like, fine, what? I went to school. I got 10 doctorates. I have 40 degrees. I've done this for 40 years. Like, all I know, the only thing, if there's anything I am qualified to tell you, it's that soy is bad. And you'd be like, well, you know, too bad. Like there's many more experts, on the FDA. And then it's like, all right, well then fine. I spec all the way into this like anti-soy person. But then like when it comes to any other opinion that might, be the case, it's like, well, I think that I don't know, the government's spending too much money on socks or something. People are like, well, you're the expert in soy. What the fuck do you know about socks? Like, leave it to the experts. And this problem is that like leave it to the experts mentality. Leave what to the experts? Like everything all the time. It's like, first of all, who qualifies who is an expert? Like I've been in enough fields to know that many people that are considered experts, I consider retarded. Like they're stupid. They don't know anything. They're not smart people that have critical thinking ability, and they're just kind of people that can follow orders or are able to bark orders at people, and people listen, for whatever reason. Um, Regardless, I just don't think it's good like to just have this kind of blind, experts say this, without I guess people doing some of their own due diligence on things. And I'm not saying that there's no such thing as an expert or everybody like should just accept the opinion of some moron online with things, but I think the amount of skepticism within within really any culture, but especially I guess where I live, it needs to increase. People need to generally like have this kind of my intuition is more powerful than whatever your quote unquote experts think at this moment in time. Like intuitively, I look at a food like soy or like tofu or something. I think it's like soy protein or something. It's even the visual look of it, even like a soy burger or whatever it is, a soy. A lot of times they're like cut up into these little like cubes of like future food. It's like the Dippin' Dots of chicken or something. And I look at that and intuitively I go, That doesn't look like food. That looks like you know cardboard that they basted in water and vinegar for 40 hours, and it became this weird paste that they chopped up into little cubes and freeze dried or something. It doesn't look like food that you should eat. And then if you taste it, it certainly doesn't taste like anything that you should be eating. Like it tastes like, oh, this is like dog food or something. This is not food for humans. But then, of course, like if you're listening to the experts, like, well, soy is actually an excellent and healthy replacement, for this and that. Um, and I'm like, I don't even think I really want to trust them. The other thing with diet, especially, and this is less true for other things because we're not so we're not as fucked in other things. But in terms of one category that I would take no professional's advice in at this point in time, it's diet. Because you look around, any person who's a dietitian is like morbidly obese. Why the fuck would I take your advice? You don't. What are you talking about? And they're like, well, actually, I have a thyroid condition. Like, it's like, did you cause your own thyroid condition? Did you eat your way, into that? I mean, I just don't. I would never outright trust just some quote unquote expert in something. I'm just becoming more and more skeptical of all of these people that claim to be experts, or just the fact that like this, just like an expert status in anything. I don't know that leave it to the experts is really a good thing anymore because unfortunately there's too many bad incentives. And I'm not saying at one point there weren't, and they're not saying there aren't good experts. There are experts that truly are solely committed to their craft, but many people that are even end up ascending to the top of their craft do so because they couldn't do what they really want to do, so it's out of spite, or it's some nepotism thing where it's like their uncle is the thing and they can make a lot of money doing this. Like you don't know why somebody's in some kind of field and why they ended up doing what they do, and unless you really like find some expert that you truly think is like totally sold on this and is like believes everything they say, um, that's at least like the first step. Like if you have someone who's half-heartedly telling you something, I wouldn't even believe them. But like someone who claims that they're an expert who isn't like autistically passionate about something, I don't think you can be an expert. Like unless you, I really think you need to have this kind of weird, strange fixation on stuff in order to like really call yourself an expert in anything. Which is why I would call myself an expert of nothing. But like, for me to listen to like a soy expert, they need to be someone who's like, is like weirdly like just too much into soy. It's like, why are they so into this? It doesn't make any sense. That needs to be like, the threshold for expert. There's experts that just don't give a fuck. They're like, oh, I've been a professor or whatever. Credentials too are also just complete malarkey now. I don't the credentials of anything. I have very little respect for, and it's dwindling what little I have left. Um, and for many reasons, but in general, like the formalization of things, of informal systems or of systems that used to be more handshaky and like kind of built on trust or just human connections, secrets that are passed down via talking and shaking hands and things like that. Um, and experts fueled by passion versus now it's like all like everything is fueled by economic incentives. And this is really where I think economists really just miss everything is they love to boil everything down to some kind of economic trade-off incentive. I heard somebody tell me the other day that like everything is just a trade-off and incentive. There's nothing like that almost would imply there's no like doing it for the love of the game. Like that doesn't exist, as if humans are just these pure min-maxers and they'll do everything to like min-max. And that's also assuming that the min-maxing is focused on money, which is also not true. It's like I even just as a quick example, you go through to any grocery store now, a lot of them have these like machines that like you'll turn in your cell phone and you can get like $100 from them or something like that. It's like, oh, we'll take your old cell phone. But like I guarantee you, I could buy a brand new phone that's worth that they sold to me for like $1,100 or something like that. I could go into that store in that booth and that thing would give me $50. So right there, I've melted $1,050 and nothing happened. Like there was no benefit that went to the consumer. All that happened was just somebody again rinsed me of my money, and there was no like economic. There was no incentive to do any of it. Like all it was is just a complete. Like the money's just gone. Like the price was made up in the first place. The second price was also made up in the first. Like there's no semblance of like this is a consistency in terms of what value is. Like the people at Apple Store thought that the phone was worth $1,100, so that's how much they sold it to me for. And then the idiot kiosk at the mall thinks that the phone's worth $50, so it gives you $50. But like, there's no radar. There's no actual like thing that says what is something worth. So it's all like worth what you pay for it. Which in this case again is like what you're paying for it is again just some fucking arbitrary number that means nothing. And also, what people value at certain things also is arbitrary and is fickle. It changes, with anything. The wind can blow a different way, and you'll change your mind on something. Uh, but like trying to like compartmentalize things as like, well, these are the incentives that are powering X, Y, Z. And you're not saying that incentives and trade offs are not non-existent. I'm not saying that at all. They certainly exist and are, they're certainly relevant economically, and they, power a lot of what humans do. But to act like that's the only inspiration or like the only reason anyone does anything for, you know, because of an incentive or a trade off, I think is foolish. Because then what do you say? If anything, what does this stupid video series mean? What's the incentive for me doing this? Why would I even fucking do this? Nobody watches it. I get no money. I've never made any money. There's no point in me doing this. Like no productive point in me doing this. I say it's for me to like, just talking, I guess whatever. But regardless, I just don't. I don't agree with this economics view that everything is just a stupid trade off or incentive. It's just not that simple. Um, and it made me think of this question that I almost kind of want to. I almost want it to be like my introduction. It's like, I walk into, to meet somebody, and then my first question is, "Who is your God?" Meaning that like, like they have to think like, all right, do I have a God, like of any kind? Do I, deify anything? And if they say, well, actually, my God is, I don't believe there is a God. And it's like, all right, well, then your God is the, big S science, the materialist, materialism at its core, which I think is one of the most the reprehensible views of whatever your God could be. But regardless, I just think it's an interesting question because everyone has a God, whether they think of it or that way or not, or or they treat it that way or not. Certainly, many people don't treat their capital G gods as uh, like divine objects. Some of them treat them as if they're very transactional. Even Christianity has an element of a transactional relationship where it's like you pray and then you do good deeds and then you'll be rewarded or whatever it is. Depending on your denomination, it all changes. But even that has certain transactional element to it. Others are more kind of all encompassing in nature. It's like kind of the we are all God religion where it's like everyone's like a piece of God or something, and that's again more I'll say transcendentalist or spiritualist, I suppose, or idealist. Maybe it might be the other way to put it. Um, and again, the reductionists and the atheists would be like the more like the sciences are God. Materialism is their deified object or idea. Because God isn't like a just using the word God also assumes it's kind of like some dude, some guy with a beard, some white guy or brown dude with a beard that's speaking about parables or something. That's not what I'm talking about. God, I think should be the representative of whatever higher object is. If we exist on some plane of consciousness or some, field of time and space in some certain period of whatever, God, it kind of exists beyond that. It transcends our own existence. So you can almost view God or any religion as the transcendence of, the existence as you know it. Like your awareness of your existence is, your human life. But then there's some kind of godly thing beyond this. And it's incomprehensible in the sense that, like, why would a non 8-dimensional object be able to see and understand 8 dimensions? It wouldn't, obviously. And I'm not saying that dimensions are the key to God, but that could be part of it. I don't know. But I think trying to getting to the bottom of who people what people consider as like a divine entity or divine being, I think is interesting. Whereas the agnostic person might be like, well, I don't know. And that would be the most annoying answer, but one that I also I think that's fine too. I think if nothing else, what what divinity should do to anybody is simply just to humble them. I don't think it's important that you have to get all of your morals from some book or some dude or some organized set of gathering principles. It can help. If you're lonely, you can have a social group with people of your beliefs, and but I think we should detach like virtuous or ethical living with like the idea of like you have to have a religion of some kind. Like people have to do. It's like because it's all based on like you have to do a good thing. You have to do good things for like a reason. Like there has to be. You gotta if you're giving money to the poor, it's well because like God would want that, right? Like we can't ever do anything just for no reason. I think that's almost like part of this like economist viewpoint. Whereas I think it would be better if people did good, like you did good things for no reason. Like you did them for the sole reason of doing the thing. It's like I'm helping homeless people or whatever good thing I'm doing. I don't, but I could. Uh, And it's because it's a good thing to do, and I want to do it. I have other reasons I don't help homeless people, but I do other things, I would think. Um, but people, you should do things for no reason. I think we should kind of decouple this idea that you have to have some guiding principle as to why you do things. It's like, why did he do that? Well, just because it seemed like the right thing to do. I don't know. It was kind of an intuitive thing, and I'm beginning to try to trust my intuitions more because as much as I've balked at, as much as we all balk now at like our native instincts on doing things, it ends up just kind of being right most of the time. And some of that, this gut instinct stuff is all, even if you want to get super materialist about it, it is a biologically wired thing. So like impulses to stay away from certain places or things or other people or whatever it is does kind of have some basis in a biological impulse of some kind. I'm not saying it isn't like you can't have like racist impulses that aren't good, and we've kind of evolved past that. I'm not saying to like be a monkey and think like a monkey. You can obviously, you don't have to do that. But, there certainly is, I think there's always merit to like why your gut feels the way that it does. There's kind of always something going on. It's not always good, but I think in general, like until you have a good idea not to, you should trust your instinct. So, for example, like if your instinct is like, fine, let's even go with the racism example because it's funny. You see a black person, you go, oh no, and you're like, all right, well, that was my impulse. Why was that my impulse? And it's like, okay, I can kind of analyze this and realize, all right, well, this is an irrational impulse to be like, there's no reason, like, what am I scared or like angry or something? I don't even know. There's no impulse. And then you can be like, all right, well, that's a stupid impulse. I don't want to think that. So stop. Whereas other things where it's like, eat this soy burger. And you're like, what the fuck is that? And you're like, it's a soy burger. It's good for you. And you look at it and you go, you know what? I don't think so. I don't think I want to eat that. And they're like, well, you have to eat it. It's soy. It's like, no, I think I'm going to trust my instinct on this and just say I'm not eating that because it doesn't look like food, and whatever that is, I don't want to eat it. But yeah, I'm just kind of beginning to believe more in my instincts than maybe. But I'm kind of just regressing at that point. I feel like naturally, by definition, we are kind of very privy to our instincts and we follow things instinctually like kids do. It's very obvious. That's why kids say like they say and do horrible things, not because they're like malevolent, but because they're like their instincts, are at odds with society. Like at some point there was some instinct to stay away from a group or a waterfall or something, and that represented a source of danger. And now modern things they don't. Obviously, the more dangerous thing is the soy burger that is being pushed down your throat. But regardless, it's like still instinct still resides in a lot of us. Which I don't think is a thing that we have to beat out of. I also think people like just don't estimate properly like the amount that humans can change over a given period of time. Like people can assume that over like a couple generations we can kind of evolve to be you know soy eating people. It's like we're not evolved to eat soy. Like we don't fucking eat that. We've never eaten that in the course of our entire history, and we've existed for, again, to our knowledge, again, if we're going to be materialist and evolutionary about it, for hundreds of thousands of years. And again, sorry vegans, but we unfortunately ate a lot of other animals. That's kind of how we sustained a lot of ourselves. So being intuitive about this, it's like, all right, well, what's the good thing to eat? It's like, okay, well, what did we eat? What have we been eating? Okay, what do we eat now and what do we used to eat? Okay, well, we're super fat now, and we used to be all jacked, giga chads, and now we're all like losers and soy boys, like literally. So maybe I'll just eat what the jack people were eating and not whatever the fuck you guys are eating. So it's like doing that to me seems like a very simple logical exercise. But many people are like, well, the FDA says to eat 80 grams of carbohydrates with every meal, and you're like, all right, well, look around. Does that seem to be working well for everybody? Like, are you looking around and jealous of how jacked everyone is at the Walmart? No, you're not. Everyone at the Walmart looks like they're either about to do heroin or just did it or some other drug. It's like they're coming. That's like the joke. They're coming into or out of a bender of some kind. Um, depending on where you live. I guess if it's the Midwest, maybe it's opiates. Maybe out down south might be getting the heroin territory. California's like weed or something, and then alcoholism is kind of bits and pieces throughout. But it's funny to think about that. But seriously, I don't, not to be rude to people, but we're not doing well physically. Physically, this is about the worst that the species has ever looked at all. So, whatever we've done in the last couple hundred years in terms of diet and exercise is not good. It's the wrong direction. So I'd almost go the opposite of whatever the FDA is saying. As a rule of thumb. So if they say 80% carbs, I'm going less than that, less than 20% carbs. Anyway, enough of the thinly veiled fat phobia. Move on to something else. I guess the other thing I was thinking about was pushing buttons. We create buttons to push. This is kind of all of collective humanity. Example being like the nuclear button. We created a button that this is in fact a literal button that could end our civilization as we know it. And like we made that button happen through our ingenuity or through our us being morons. Whatever you want to think about it. I tend to think it's more impressive than it is stupid. I think it is still kind of was a dumb thing to do, but I think it's impressive nonetheless that now we have this kind of mutually assured destruction. Is like if anyone fucks around too much, everyone's going to find out and it'll be over. Which is not the ending I think anyone wants. I think at the very end of the day, regardless of what these anti-natalists say or something, people want like humanity to go on. It's like we laugh at the fucking Peter Thiel who's like, well, maybe humans are like, should humans exist? And he pauses for an hour and waits and thinks. Regardless, he's still a human, and if I held a knife up to his neck, he would say, yes, I want to live. I want to live. And I think he just has such a low view of humanity that he thinks we should start over as transhumans or whatever, or thinks that we should augment our body. Whereas I think we should take a more natural route and not ruin the entire planet and 99% of the populations just to achieve like a technologically augmented human race. Because that's really what this would end up as. Like, suppose that we did kind of take this transhumanist viewpoint, like the sacrifice for pure like actual like truly implemented transhumanism is the destruction of at least 99% of or 95% of the population. Like they're gone. Like they either become slaves or they find some way to essentially exit like the affluent or the realm of having autonomy over your existence. Will be completely wiped out if we have to go this like transhumanist route. And then beyond that, like we would only exist well as transhumans if we had like this complete surveil state. And then it all just kind of, it boils back to the same question, which I'm begging that people ask themselves is, what is the fucking point of existing? Like if your point of existing is to make enough money, to make yourself financially independent and to collect those bands or whatever it is that these, VCs or whatever want to do with their time, that's fine. Like you can have your own ambitions and your ambitions can be financial in nature. That's okay. But also realize that many other people don't share that same view. And as tolerant as you claim to be about anything, you also have to accept that many people don't have to have money as their primary incentive. And same with like living forever. Many people want to like, most people don't care. They don't want to live for thousands of years. They don't even want to do that. They just want to live for long enough and not fucking hate themselves every moment of their life. Like they just want to have some, like, they want to have a decent life. It's, okay in length. You want to accomplish a few things, do what a lot of our ancestors did without all this bullshit, and then just kind of, check out at, at 75, 95, whatever, somewhere in that range. 70 to 100 is fine. I think most people would probably want to live to 70, but then, it varies once you get to 80. Like, okay, how bad a shape am I in? That's kind of the next question, which is, again, the good life. Most people don't want to live for 10,000 years because they're also smart enough to know, intuitively they don't, but they're smart enough to know that it would be retarded to live 5,000 years because it's like, an infinity, what do they say? An infinity of heaven is hell or something like that is the quote. Like too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing, or whatever. You can think about it however you want. But many of the transhumanists don't really think that way. They think that there's some, like they're going to discover something that gives them more reason to live. It's always this like, it's almost this like next cookie mentality where it's like, if you it's like, well, if you do this, then we can do this, and then there's like another cookie after that, and then there's going to be another cookie, and then we'll have this, and it's just this like fanatical thinking where we'll be able to continually give ourselves meaning, because if the point now is to get to Mars and become transhumanists, what's the point after that? Like, what happens next? What do we do? What's the next big thing? We get to other planets? All right, great. We're at other planets now. Now what? We're interplanetary. What are we going to do? Huh? We're going to what? Oh, realize that we shouldn't have been eating carbs all the time and, not exercising, and that porn probably wasn't a good thing. We're going to start putting all these, things back in the bottles that we, pulled out. We're going to spend generations and generations trying to undo what, most people kind of already know already. It's like, all right, sawing someone's head off is probably a bad thing. Don't do that. Or if you find yourself for any reason sawing somebody's head off, you're probably in the wrong. Let's just let's just put it that way. In terms of it's probably not the right way, to exist. Not saying there's no plans for violence ever, but clearly there's not. I don't know. I don't know. I got off track. Either way, pushing buttons. Like, we created these buttons, and like the nuclear button being one obvious button that we've created, but we can't create the button, or like unpush them. I'll say, like, we haven't pushed the nuclear button, but we could. Even so, like, suppose even like fine, like the sugar button, like we put that. Everyone's eating sugar now. Sugar is everyone loves sugar. Sugar's it's in everything. We got sugar in our shampoo. There's sugar in shampoo, which is fucking crazy. We can't unpush the sugar button. How about we just stop fucking pushing new ones? Stop fucking with it. Don't push the transhumanist button. Don't push the war button. Stop pushing buttons. Like, don't, or push the gay button or whatever. We've pushed so many buttons, we have to stop pushing buttons. Like, I don't care what you think the button is going to do, it will not undo the problems. Okay, unfortunately, undoing the problems that we've created is boring and is not going to be in the news, and is not going to, like, it's not going to be fun. Like, pushing buttons is fun. It's fun to do things and to like create new things and to build atomic bombs. I'm sure that was a lot of fun for people, as stressful as it was. But we have to stop pushing buttons, just collectively, all of them. Just in general, don't. It's almost now where I would think like doing nothing is perhaps one of the most virtuous things you could do. Like, in lieu of working as a venture capitalist or whatever other horrible thing you could invent to do for yourself. Honestly, just deciding, all right, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm just going to do nothing. I'm not going to actively ruin someone's life is, quite honestly, not even that bad of a way to exist at this point, where it's like so many people find themselves doing things, doing the wrong things, that they should spend more time thinking about what the fuck they're doing versus like the fact that they need to be doing something. And maybe that's just like something innate in our biology, where we were kind of always like on the run. Like, we're always kind of hunter gathering. We're always doing something. We're always up to, more shenanigans or whatever it is, because we had to be, because we needed to survive, and there was, people, animals after us, and nature and starvation, all these things. If you can't tell, I'm in a very primal mindset these days, where I'm very thinking like a hunter gatherer. But we had lots of things, and it was good for us to kind of be, hyperactive and kind of be up and doing stuff all the time, and whatever. And sure, we were somewhat lazy sometimes, and some people are lazier than others, and there's some virtue to that. But I think, especially at this point in our civilization, where we've gotten to, I think we'd rather almost be lazy than to try and fix our problems by creating more. Because you don't really know what beast you're creating. Like, people don't know what horrible things they create by doing things. Like, I'm sure, and this is even true of all the tech platforms that I rip on every 20 minutes. I'm sure Facebook, Zuckerberg had no clue that Facebook would become, a breeding ground for boomer memes and racism or whatever, or Roblox would become a child predator's goon cave. Like, that would be. I'm sure they didn't know these things as they created them. And I'm not saying to do nothing. Roblox is fine. That's not the problem. The problem is, people that use Roblox, and even Facebook to an extent. I'll say like that. The React app that is Facebook isn't the problem. The issue at this point is now Zuckerberg's, moronic policies around Facebook. It's not like, the code itself is not what I have an issue with. Like, the people who built the code, it's the philosophy of the idiots that control the code and what they're doing. That's the real problem. Like, creating it wasn't the issue. And Roblox I don't have an issue with because I'm pretty sure at least it's part of it's open source, or Libre or whatever. And I guess it's just maybe it could be a hobby project besides the pedophile part. But anyway, we need to stop like just pushing buttons with stuff. Like in general, I think doing less might be more effective than doing more. Not in a vacuum, but in general. It's just if you're not sure what you're doing, if you don't have intentionality with whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, I think that is where you need to stop doing things, like doing things without purpose. And I even now wrote myself this note, and it now sits on right in front of me on my computer. What do I intend to accomplish with this device at this time? This is just to create a sense of intentionality, where it's like if I'm sitting down on my computer, I have to have a goal to accomplish. Now, I can spend more time thinking about the goal if I'm not sure. The goal isn't to just like, I guess the goal could be to like go on and goon on the internet or something, whatever, or something. That could be a goal. That never is my goal. But then if that was my goal, I'd have to go, okay, well, I just said that out loud to myself. My goal is to goon. All right, do I want to be doing that? And I'll be like, no. All right, then I need to ask myself that question again. I ask again, what do you hope to accomplish with this device at this time? Which is a question I think we should ask ourselves, not even with the devices that we use, but with our entire lives in general. Like, what do you intend to accomplish with your life? What do you intend to accomplish with this day of work? Is it just to make money? All right, well, that's how long can you do that? You can do that for a certain amount of time, and a certain percentage of your life can be done aimlessly or just like for the sake of money or something. But if you never find yourself doing anything other than things for money or things for reasons that are unsubstantive or just shallow, then what the fuck are you doing with your life? I guess, to put it that way. If like everything you've ever done is just for money or for like short-term enjoyment, if that really is like the only thing you can answer that question with, then I think it's some serious like soul searching needs to be done. Or like, what the fuck do you want to accomplish with your life? And not to say that you can't like do things for money. You certainly can. But again, if you ask yourself that question many times over, what do you intend to accomplish at this time with whatever you're doing, or what's the purpose of doing this and that? If the answer is always like, well, I got to make money, or it's like, well, I got to eat. It is never like for a greater reason. It's never like because I feel the need to create, or because I think the world would be better if I added this to the world. Like, hopefully those become your answers to something at some point with something that you're doing, and it isn't always just like a means to an end. The end being like happiness or money or safety or something that is I think relatively, I'll say, materialistic or shallow in nature. Whereas I think our goals, especially since we have the powers of gods almost at this point with the technology that we have, we're wielding like incomprehensible powers at our fingertips, but we're not really thinking about all the responsibility that should come with that. And I know it's stupid because it's like, yeah, like even these meth heads can have Chromebooks or something. There's no like the technology is so pervasive that it seems so easy to take for granted that we have all these amazing resources and things. And I say amazing only in the fact that they have capacity to do amazing things, not that people are using them for amazing reasons. Most of our compute is completely wasted. Like people, it's even funny. I think about people that like are talking about these great applications of AI. It's like, well, there's going to be an AI doctor, and the AI doctor will be. I've seen so many radiologists, and people are just like, they're not using AI for doctors. They're using AI to like create a GIF of me like at the beach with my family. And it's like, okay, instead of going to the beach with your family, you're going to waste 50 cents or whatever it is on this prompt to create a shitty picture of you at the beach with, like, what a complete waste. Not even the waste of the the AI model itself, but then you have to think about all of the bits that you that you just transferred back and forth. All the picture, every bit of that picture, every bit of all those messages, the text that you sent has to travel all the way across the internet to a server somewhere far, far away, get used on the AI model, then come all the way back. Like, you wasted all of that electricity, all of those bits being sent through that wire, just so you could see a crappy picture of yourself. It's like that. I think I think is the, like, it's not worth it. We're wasting, so much of our compute is wasted on literal garbage. But anyway, I don't know. I'll move on to something else here for the last bit. I guess since I've kind of been all over the place here, I might as well talk about this. I think politics, this is just kind of another funny abstraction on things. I think it's supposed to be like whatever it is now is one thing, but I think in its purest form, it should be like the way people talk about car brands is the way people should talk about their political leanings. It could be like, I'm just a Toyota guy. I value the dependability, the cheapness, the availability of parts or whatever. And someone else could say, well, it's pricey, but I like BMW. Like they got good amenities. They have, their seat warmers are nice or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's like, all right, dude, it's a car. It's like whatever. Like I think your BMW's snobby and pretentious, and the the the, the steering wheel heating is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But at the end of the day, it's a car. Like whatever gets you to point A and B, it's fine. But now it's like people. I don't even want to get on the road with somebody that drives a Ford. Those nasty Ford people. It's like, all right, dude. It's a car. Like, relax. At the end of the day, people are. What's the point of it all? People are using their cars to try and get to their fucking job, to try and feed their stupid family. To like get check things off of their list. That's what they're trying to do. And you making everything about the cars, and they shouldn't drive if they have these cars, and like yada yada. This is all it's a statement about our world if you drive this car, and it's like, no, I don't think it is. I think at some point, I think that's what it was at some point, where it's like, oh, they're Democrats, so they just kind of think this. Oh, it's like, well, we were raised more on the Ford with Ford cars, or we were raised with the Republican values or whatever, and it's less like this personal identity that represents everything that and more of just like, well, it's just like a set of preferences, or I tend to like the Toyota cars. That doesn't mean they can all have like Toyota. Still, I can still be a Toyota guy that thinks Toyota has made bad cars. I can be like, well, the '05 to '10 Camrys really suck. And I'm a Toyota guy. You can even say something like that. I think it kind of maps, not one to one, but it's a reasonable mapping to what politics I think should be. It shouldn't be like the way politics is now, where it's like this matter of everything's a matter of life and death, and it's all so important. I don't think it's all. I don't think it's that important. At the end of the day, what are they going to what are they trying to do? Get up, feed their stupid family. Again, they're trying to do the same things. It's not like it's like this. Everything is this. Carefully weighted. Some people don't have the bandwidth or the time to give a fuck about why your BMW steering wheel seat is so important, or why your goon pad and your Tesla's better. Speaking of cars that I hate, brands that I don't like, it is Tesla, and it's not have anything to do with a political reason. Actually, it's simply because of the amount of needless electronics that they've shoved into those. This is even true, not even of Tesla. Tesla is just kind of the first one to like replace the entire GUI of your car. I say GUI, but the entire interface of your car. I guess it is graphical in the sense that it's 3 dimensions of your eyes. The entire GUI there with just a stupid tablet like an iPad instead of like having like these haptic control sensors for everything. It's literally the stupidest thing I've ever seen, and nobody wants it. No actual like I think any loser that wants to control their AC with tapping buttons is a liar. Like whatever kind of usability testing they did at Tesla like before was a lie. Like they did it on people that they paid. That's why you should do. If you're a California-based company, you need to go outside of California to do your user testing. You shouldn't test on natives of California because a lot of them are so insulated. They're like, oh yeah, I'd love the iPad. And it's like, no one wants a fucking iPad as to control their car. They just want to be able to turn the AC on and listen to the radio. Like, why do you need to play Flappy Bird on a fucking car? It's supposed to drive you from point A to point B. What are you doing? Playing an app? Like, why do they have apps on things? I can tell you why they have apps. They have apps to sign you up for shit, and so they can get their email and they can send you push notifications. And if you miss a payment, that they can default your car and repossess it for you. That's why they have these stupid apps. But the consumers themselves, it's not even the corporations that need to ask themselves why do they have this app question. It's the people that are buying the shit. They need to go, why does this have an app? And they go, oh wait, if this has an app, I'm locking myself into something, and it's not. This is not a good thing I'm getting myself into. I need to avoid this application. And by not buying the stupid car. Especially with like in terms of like doing things and not doing things, this is most prevalent with like buying shit. Like, don't buy anything. You don't need to buy anything. Like, what do you need to buy? What do you actually need to buy? All right, food, done. Okay, gas or transportation, also done. Fine, do that. Besides that, like, do you honestly need anything? What do you truly need? Like, do you really need another piece of plastic? Like, what are you buying right now? oh, it's cute. No, it's a piece of plastic. Like, ask yourself truly, what is it that what am I about to purchase? Is it a piece of plastic crap? Okay, then don't buy it. Um, I don't know. People just feel like they need to, in order to participate or in order to be like, I'm not a real human if I'm not consuming, right? It's like, no, that you can be any bit as real and as participatory in whatever you think is important without having to buy a bunch of stuff. That isn't a prerequisite to existence. Like, you buying stuff does not justify your existence to me. Like, you still exist whether or not you bought anything. That's not, I don't make the judgment on existence whether or not, you've bought something in the last 48 hours. But unfortunately, I think people do kind of see themselves as like, as all this economic talk about economic units, they begin to kind of see themselves as economic units, where it's like, if I'm not doing something, it's helping the economy. What am I doing? I need to buy. It's like, no, people are telling you to buy. You don't have to buy, especially if you're struggling. What the fuck are you doing? Quit buying shit, idiot. All right, how much time do I have left? 5 minutes. This has been kind of a very antagonistic episode, but that's just kind of that's my shtick right now. I guess the last thing I can finish up on with is with vices in general. I think it's silly to think that, I'm not saying humans have to have vices. I think, especially in our modern incantation, it's very difficult for uh, you know people to exist now without some kind of vice. Sometimes it could be alcohol or drugs, or it could just be food, or it could be anger. Anger's a vice for people. Um, silence sometimes can even be a vice, where they don't talk to people. Antisocialness, gaming can be a vice. Like, there's so many modern vices now. There's like, we've invented so many things that all of them have become our inventions are so numerous that they've become so ubiquitous that they end up becoming vices. Like, games used to be like a great thing because there were so few of them. There was like sports games, right? And then there was like card games or something, and they were so innocent. And now it's like games are so prevalent and immersive. You can do literally anything within the confines of a game that it can become dangerous if it's not, if you're not thinking hard about what you're actually doing with your time and being intentional about it. And so my statement here is not that you need to avoid or somehow relinquish yourself of all your vices. If you have a really bad vices, like, I'd say drugs and stuff like that, if those are your vices of choice that you gravitate towards, no judgment. I'm not. This is, some of it is, I'll say a genetic predisposition of sorts. But you're never going to eliminate them per se, but just moderate them, right? If you know your vice is caffeine and you're just some caffeine hound, which, by the way, again, raising my hand, that can be my vice of sorts. I think if I get out of control with the sugar-free monsters, I can get out of control. I can have 2 or 3 of those a day, which is bad, and I understand that. And I'm probably never going to be at like caffeine zero. I could try, but at some point, I'd almost rather say, all right, that's kind of a half vice or a vice of mine, half vice. I think I moderate it pretty well. Um, I need to like control that in some way. I need to have, kind of be aware that that is the vice of my choice, and like kind of, have a support system or some kind of system, whether internally or externally, that I'm going to manage. That's my vice. I'm going to kind of rein it in, right? Or if your vice is like getting mad at people that, care about you, that could also be a vice, being, whatever. Even humor can be used as a vice, to some extent, if you're trivializing things. If you're kind of laughing during your divorce proceedings, or you're at a funeral and you can't stop cracking jokes, like, that is, that's a potentially a vice of mine that I could, I could arrive at, where I can't take anything seriously. I'm at least wary of that. That hasn't been a problem for me. In case you were curious, but no, that hasn't been a problem for me. But regardless, I think people like I think it's unrealistic to assume that you'll always like you can be free from all vices and be this like perfect virtuous person. Like, you're not going to. Like, there's gonna be something wrong with you, right? But like, the question is, like, do people know what it is? Like, do your loved ones know what it is, and like, can you manage it like adequately? Like, is it gonna be like, how big of a problem is it for people? Um, don't like how well can you manage it is kind of the overarching question. So just, you're gonna have them, just rein them in, know what they are, and be intentional about trying to trying to keep them under control, I'll say. Yeah, I guess yeah, I guess the last thing I'll put forward is this. I've been thinking about this, like these life philosophies and things, and one of them that was interesting was I just kind of call it this like pay it forward philosophy, where the people that do nice things for you, you may or may not be able to do nice things back to them themselves, but you'll always you'll likely have the opportunity to do something nice, similar in to that for someone else. So then that's kind of what your duty is at that point. So suppose like especially like with older and younger generations, like if your grandfather gifted you a house or something, odds are you're never gonna be able to buy another house and give it back to them to like call it even. Like that's just not how it's gonna work. Like you're probably gonna end up having like, all right, maybe someday I'll be the grandfather and I can give them the house, and that's like that would be my gift to the grandfather. It's like, hey, grandpap, you gave me the house, I gave another house to someone else. Like I'm paying it forward. Like that kind of life philosophy. Whereas I think people now are very transactionally minded, where they're like, well, I have to give Grandpa back a house. It's like, no, you don't. Like he gave that gift to you, and your gift to him could be giving it to someone else who needs it. Because the point is, you need the house right now. Grandpa obviously didn't need a house. He gave you it. He didn't need a house. That's why he gave it to you. It's like at some point, someone else is going to need a house, and you'll have one probably. Because I gave you one, or if you get another one, so you give it to them. I'm not saying this does not have nothing to do with the house. It could be for anything, but just as like I don't know, this pay it forward philosophy I think is interesting to say the least. But yeah, anyway, I'll wrap it up there for this time. Yeah, thanks for watching. Peace out.